Okay, in this video I want to talk to you about how our philosophy curriculum is laid out in the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. Philosophy is one of my favorite subjects. I love philosophy. Read it every day. I've got a different video on why everybody should study philosophy. It's everybody's business, not just for academic eggheads. It's for everybody. Everybody's a philosopher. Everybody is. You all have a philosophy of life. You all have philosophical views. You can't help but philosophize. The only question is, are you going to be a good one or a bad one? And the only way you can be a good one is if you study it, practice it, etc. Anyway, we have here at the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy a whole entire curriculum in scholastic philosophy, the philosophy of the schools of the Middle Ages. Obviously, we're focusing here on the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas, which in my view is the most cogent, the most sound philosophy ever put to paper. Okay, so let's talk about philosophy and how it's kind of laid out here at the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. Let's put philosophy at the top here. Philosophy just, etymologically, just the word itself means love of wisdom. Wisdom. We could talk a whole lot about that. Knowing the highest causes, knowing the ultimate causes and explanations of things through the powers of unaided reason. That's a short little concise definition of philosophy. Knowing the ultimate causes of things through the powers of unaided reason. So using our reason to know the deepest causes, the most first and fundamental causes. And that's how philosophy differs from science. Science is typically looking at secondary causes, material causes, stuff like that. This caused that. But in philosophy, we're doing kind of the same thing, but we're going deeper, deeper. Science says things are made out of atoms, and atoms are made out of different protons, neutrons, quarks, whatever. Philosophy digs to the bottom. What are quarks made out of? Stuff like that. Where's everything come from? These kinds of things. So philosophy is knowing the ultimate causes of things through the powers of unaided reason, and we're learning about things. We're studying things. It's not just abstract reasoning that you do that doesn't have any applicability to the world. No, in philosophy, we are studying things, and therefore we are studying being. We are studying existence. We are studying reality in philosophy. All right. So that's the first part. And now we're going to get into all the different branches and divisions of philosophy. So we're studying being, existence of some sort, and there are two main kinds of being. Okay, first of all, I hope I can get all this on the board. Okay. We're talking about mental. Let's talk about the difference between mental being and over here, real being. This is pretty obvious. If you can't tell the difference between mental being and real being, you're probably suffering from insanity of some kind. Okay, because what mental being is, it's a type of reality, but it's the reality that goes on in your head. It's the reality that exists in your mind. Mental being, things like ideas, thoughts, stuff like this. Things that go on in your mind. We call it ens rationis in Latin. Okay, beings of reason. They exist. You have ideas. You have things going on in your mind, but they aren't outside of your mind. Okay, so that's the difference here. Mental being, ens rationis, the things that exist inside the mind, and real being, the things that exist outside the mind. Esse reale, they say. You see, ens reale, real being, like this pen and this podium and the camera and you, things that exist outside the mind. Like I said, if you can't tell the difference between a real tree in your backyard and a pink elephant in your mind, you got problems. All right, so we study both of these in philosophy. Okay, so for example, let's go with mental being, one of my favorite topics in the world. When we talk about studying things inside the mind in philosophy, we're talking about logic. the study of logic, the study of how the mind attains truth. Love it. We have a whole course here, of course, in that topic itself, the importance of logic, the science of proper thinking. That's what logic is. And we could talk about different kinds of logic. It talks about formal logic and material logic, but I'm not going to get into all that right now. I get into that into the course. Right now, I just want you to know that philosophy, this is a branch of philosophy. It's the study of proper reason. And that, of course, is a type of mental being, right? Because in logic, we're talking about things like concepts, terms, propositions, arguments, right? Those are in here, right? It's not like you walk out your back door one day and you trip over an argument. No, that doesn't happen. No, arguments exist, but they're inside the head. And maybe they're expressed through words or they're expressed through writing, but primarily they're inside here. And that's where we got to study them. All right, so that's an extremely important branch of philosophy. It's actually should be the beginning point. Thomas Aquinas said, logic is the art of arts. You should study logic first. You should study how reason works first so you can get on and do well in the other aspects of reason and the other, academic fields. But if you don't know how reason works, you're not going to be good at anything academically. Medicine, science, philosophy, whatever. Theology, big one. All right, so logic, very important part of the study of philosophy. And then, of course, we're going to move over to real being because philosophy studies things outside the mind, the things in the rerum natura, natural things outside. All right. And here we make an important distinction. I got to make sure I get all this in. Between speculative philosophy, and I'll put this over here, practical philosophy. Sorry about that. Speculative philosophy, practical philosophy. Speculative, thank you, speculare, to look, like glasses, spectacles. This is knowledge for knowledge's sake. Okay, knowing for the sake of knowing. I just want to know stuff. Aristotle says, sometimes we want to use our eyes for doing stuff. I want to use my eyes to write a paper. I want to use my eyes to drive a car. That's seeing for the purpose of action. But we also might want to see just to see. I don't really want to do anything right now. I just want to just look around. I just want to see for seeing's sake. Okay, so this is knowing so in the same way, knowing for the sake of knowing or knowing for the sake of action, that's the difference between speculative philosophy and practical philosophy. All right, let me just kind of knock out the practical side here real quick. When we talk about knowledge, reason for the sake of action, and we're talking about reason for the sake of why we do things, we're talking about happiness, that gets into the whole area of things like ethics, ethical philosophy, moral philosophy, political philosophy. Okay, all this is knowledge for the sake of action of some sort, for the sake of attaining our happiness. Okay, that gets into moral philosophy, things of this sort. I'm not going to get into all the different divisions here, but you get the point. All right, so knowledge for the sake of action. All right, let's talk about speculative philosophy, knowing for the sake of knowing. And this is based on a technical point. I'm not going to get into all the details right now. It's called the 3 degrees of abstraction. Anyway, what we're talking about here is we study real being as what we call as changing. They called it mobile. And this is where we get into what philosophers call natural philosophy. The study of changing being, really just the natural world, natural philosophy, studying the natural world, studying being as changing, okay? And this is where we get into different topics, such as things like this. What is change? What is space? What is time? What is man? You see? Natural philosophy, using reason to study the things in the natural world. There's also a level of abstraction higher than that, which Aristotle called mathematics, which is the study of being as quantified. Okay, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that right now, but I just want you to know that there is that part there. And then we get into my favorite area of philosophy, the ultimate. It's the highest form of philosophy, Thomas Aquinas said. Okay, so we get further abstract, and we just study being as being. So this is reality as changing the natural world. This is reality as quantified, the mathematical stuff. This is being as being, just studying being, just by itself. Whatever is a being would be covered in this branch of philosophy. This is the philosophical study of all reality. It's also known as metaphysics. It comes after the physics, okay? Metaphysics. The ultimate goal of philosophy, metaphysics. And there are different branches of metaphysics too. Let me explain to you what those are, because as Aristotle said, it belongs to the highest philosophy to defend first principles of knowing. So when we talk about metaphysics, we get into things like, and don't get freaked out by my big words, I'll explain to you what they mean. Okay? Epistemology, the philosophical study of knowledge. Now we talked about knowledge a little bit about here, but logic assumes we already have knowledge. Here we get into the defense of knowledge. How do we know things? How do we know what we know? Sometimes it's called criteriology. What are the criteria by which we can use to determine what we really know from what we don't know? You see, a defense against skepticism, all this kind of stuff. This would fall under the branch of epistemology in philosophy, defending first principles, how thought relates to reality, stuff like that. All right. Next branch of metaphysics is what we call ontology. Ontology. These are the principles of all being, things that all beings have. I mean, whether it's you, whether it's an angel, whether it's this podium, they all have certain principles to them. They all have essence and existence, stuff like that. Okay, so that's where we get into ontology. We talk about things like substance, act, potency. Again, I don't want to bowl you over with all these terms, but it's a lot of fun. And in these upcoming lessons, I'm going to talk to you about it. I'm going to teach you about it, and I think you'll be as excited as I am to learn this stuff. All right. Last branch of metaphysics. All right, it's what is known as natural theology. Natural theology. Now, I've already talked about that in another video when we talked about our apologetics curriculum. So this is a point where our philosophy curriculum and our apologetics curriculum overlaps, and that's perfectly normal and reasonable. So when we're talking about natural theology, now we're using human reason to know as much as we can about the first cause, about God. This is the study of God as conducted with the powers of human reason. So it's different than, theology in the strict sense, supernatural theology, because there we're talking about how we know about God through faith. Here we're talking about how we know about God through our powers of natural reason. So we talk about things like how do we know that God exists, what is God like, the nature of God, stuff like this. And we have whole courses on this, whole courses on natural theology, course on the first cause argument, course on the design argument, course on the moral argument, so on. One of my favorite branches of philosophy. All right, so that's how the philosophy curriculum works in the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy, and I really look forward to teaching you all this stuff, and I hope that you will find it as enlightening and enjoyable as I do.